Welcome to the Arrow Podcast. My name is Chris Mulvaney. Today I have Roman Ramirez, Director of Commercial Strategy here at Gemini Shippers Association. We're excited to have him here on this podcast today to learn a little bit about what Gemini's up to. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm really glad to be here, this
Awesome.
side of the country, from the West Coast. But
Yeah, you flew all the way from Arizona to come see me. That's
yes,
great.
got out of the heat, so I thank you for that.
Yeah, and we cranked the air conditioning quite a bit down here for you too, so
All
it definitely
good.
feels a little different. We've been working together for quite some time now, and it's about time we get you on the podcast to learn a little bit more about Gemini and let your audience know what you've been up to. Yeah. So just give us a quick little high-level overview of what Gemini Shippers Association is.
Yeah, so Gemini Shippers Association is a coalition or a group of ocean freight procurement in its simplest form, right? What we do is help medium to small size shippers, and we'll probably go into details into what the definition of that is.
Yep.
But we help them with their ocean transportation. And what we do is negotiate contracts with the ocean carriers and aggregate the volumes of all of our members and go into those negotiations with those volumes to help secure the contracts that we can then offer to those to our members or shippers, primarily importers. It's the majority of our business is import, but we do some export and some cross trade as well.
That's great. Yeah. So then you have a lot of power then with your organizations. You can help them in a lot of ways. It seems like.
Yeah, I mean it's the volumes are quite high. We are without saying specifics, like in the top 10 largest importers in North America, and so with that. Brings those large contracts, and with that brings the competitive rates, terms, and all the details around the ocean freight that helps our members out.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, from my understanding, you guys have been doing this for over a century.
Yeah, the history of Gemini goes back, for a very, very long time.
That's pretty wild.
Yes,
wow.
yes.
So, tell me a little bit about like how your mission has evolved over time, and what's different now.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about the history, right? So the concept of shippers associations wasn't formal until the Shipping Act of 1984. That's when the Federal Maritime Commission, I guess at that time they were discussing what we can do for American companies, especially the small to medium-sized importers. And this concept of Shippers Association came up. Co-ops, coalitions, aggregating demand of any sort goes back, I mean, you could probably even go centuries, right? And so that concept existed already. So at the time, the association was actually called Fashion Accessories Shippers Association. And so it revolved around New York and all the apparel, garment, accessories, jewelry, manufacturers, suppliers, and distributors in New York, where in one building you can make 25 sales calls and just through the various floors in the building.
Yep.
And so that concept brought forth, in fact, FASA was for short, was the first shippers association that was created. And since then, basically, we've grown and expanded beyond fashion and accessories, right?
Yep.
We've gone into different commodity segments, furniture, automotive, food and beverage, getting some chemicals here and there. And so as we grew in those commodity segments, that fashion piece, while still very big and still makes up a large portion of our membership, we had to make a change. And so with that was a different brand, different name, and that's how Gemini Shippers Association came about.
Wow, interesting. Very cool. So what logistics challenges or global trade challenges have you noticed, in the past 10, 15 years?
For those of us in the that work in the global supply chain or logistics in general, the one thing that always keeps our job interesting is disruption.
Yeah.
There's always something around the corner.
Always something, yeah.
Right when you think you're settling in and all right, things are going smooth, something happens.
Right.
And over the last 10, 15 years, it's been pretty nonstop.
Right.
There's always something going on. maybe not monthly, but quarterly for sure.
Right.
That is impacting our business, that's impacting supply chain in general. And so that is, to say there's one thing is impossible, because that one thing today is a different in Q3,
Right.
and it's a different in Q4, and a different in Q1.
Right.
And so the fact that everything impacts containerized ocean shipping, it makes it a little bit more difficult, right? Because you have simple things like weather. Weather could be a huge impact.
Right.
Geopolitical environment,
Right.
huge impact.
Yep.
Market dynamics, right? Different economies from various countries, as well as on the domestic side,
Right.
huge impact. And then you have, at the end of the day, human error.
Right.
You have some issues where ships get stuck in the middle of the largest canal in the world,
Right.
and just block the canal, right?
Right.
Whether it was human or mechanical or whatnot, but ships crash into each other, they hit ports, they hit bridges, and so every single one of those issues is a disruption that we have to work around, and not so much all the logistics providers have to work through it, but it's the importers, it's the folks who own that cargo that need that container full of their product out on the stores.
Right.
They have to deal with that.
Right.
And so that is, it's a big piece. It's a big part of our world today. That's when I speak to the education sector or younger folks looking at getting into this industry, I tell them that, because the question always asks, what makes your job interesting? And I tell them, we have to pay attention to everything. Trends, again, weather, disruptions, all of that. And that's what keeps it interesting, because as you watch the news, you can see or read a news article and know that eventually is going to affect my job.
Right.
And how you get ahead of that, how you have a plan B or a plan C or a plan D, E, F, is how you get through those disruptions.
Right.
And
some of them are so challenging to even predict, right? I mean, like,
exactly.
how do you even predict, what's happening politically or?
Well, I mean, without getting political, but the Red Sea, that was, some folks were saying, oh no, this is not going to happen, or oh yeah, but it's going to be short-lived. Here we are years later, and still the majority of our container ships aren't going through the Red Sea.
Right.
They're still going around Africa, and
Right.
so I don't think anyone would have predicted it gone this long.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So you deal with a lot of small, mid-sized shippers, right? And you're giving them the leverage that like the giants would essentially have. Explain to the audience what that really means.
Yeah, and so first let's define what small and medium is, right?
Yes.
And this is a little bit of a ego test. Some folks who have several thousand are like, oh no, we're pretty big. And in the reality, no, there's a very small percentage of number of importers that are called big.
Right. Yeah.
And so that medium segment is quite large.
Right.
And the small, don't get me wrong, they're small guys. And some folks we do help, right? We do help the 10, 20, 50 TEU or FEU a year type guys. But that medium segment ranges up to 15,000 TEU a year. And so those are the folks that some of them may have direct contracts with ocean carriers. Most of them do not. And most of them do have a mix. Like they may have one direct carrier where they have to have a commitment with that ocean carrier. And then they're working with freight forwarders, NVOs, 3PLs for the rest of the piece. At the end of the day, most of them still need the support of a freight forwarder,
Right.
whether it's documentation, customs clearance, so on and so forth. And so what we do in our model is, again, we aggregate volumes. Our association is over 400 members strong. So if you could think of that many members and their volumes, combine them all into one, we go in, negotiate with the ocean carriers, get the competitive rates, and offer those to those members. Now, what does that do? What it does, outside, not even talking about rate discussions, right?
Okay.
What does it do? It just builds resiliency in their supply chain.
Right.
Why? We negotiate long-term contracts. We do have some short-term contracts as well to maintain some of that flexibility, but the long-term contracts are really what the majority of the volume that we move. Why is that? If you're an importer or a supplier, distributor, whatever it is, you want stability in your supply chain,
Right.
right? These supply chain and then logistics departments, they're cost centers for these companies. And when we can not only help on the cost, but also say with confidence that these rates that you have available to you are the same rates that you will have 6 months from now, 8 months from now, even 10 months from now, depending on the time of year. That is huge for them to be able to build their budget for the whole year.
Right.
Because those that are utilizing a spot market, the 3PLs, freight forwarders, and using those short-term contracts without even knowing that long-term options are there, they're just paying the freight as the market rides. So
Right.
sometimes it's lower than the long-term rate. Most often it's higher than the long-term rate. And more importantly for them is they don't know what their ocean freight costs are going to be a month from now,
Right.
2 months from now.
Yep.
And so what could be a rate of, let's say, $2,000 or $3,000 now, it could be double that
Right.
with whatever disruption that comes, right? And so that's where I think the big piece that is the most helpful piece for the medium and small size importers is that stability and trust that they're going to be able to utilize that and build that into their budget for the whole year.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's awesome. Having an advocate like that, work with you and on behalf of you, I think it's extremely powerful and it needs to happen across a lot of industries.
Yes, yes.
As you're talking, I'm like, how do we integrate something like this in the marketing space?
Yeah, exactly. And it exists, right? It exists. We have conversations. So we actually do have several partnerships with other industry and trade associations. I know you and I have talked about the automotive segment
Right,
and
yes,
whatnot.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so we have partnerships with the bigger ones out there. And they're doing the same thing. And you mentioned advocacy.
Right.
They're doing a lot more than just advocacy, right? So when you buy into these groups, it's a lot of resources, like-minded companies as well. Like you'd be amazed how much you just get a group of similar-minded folks in similar spaces. They get together, and how helpful that is just from them being able to have that conversation.
Right.
Let alone all this. We're a bigger voice. We can get your name out there. We can help in which way. Even just that piece of getting together and having discussions is really, really helpful in a situation where otherwise you probably wouldn't have that type of opportunity to do so.
Yep. Cool. So I'm going to ask you a question. You may or may not want to answer this, but you guys deal with a bunch of top tier ocean carriers. So what does that negotiation process look like behind the scenes?
Oh, yeah. So for those that don't know, at least on the import side and mainly the Trans-Pacific trade lane, there's one contract season for the whole year. And it always comes the same time every year. Some folks have early bids and some are late, but it comes around that April, May timeframe every year. And so the build up to that is months in advance.
Right.
By December, we're already getting prepared for those negotiations that are basically going to finalize in the same May timeframe. And those initial conversations with the ocean carriers are very important. The track record and volume trends that we show with the ocean carriers is another strength of ours that helps us in those negotiations. Not only do our members trust us that we're going to help them move their cargo, but the ocean carriers, which we see as partners as well, they trust that we're going to bring the volumes that we say we're going to bring.
Right.
We're very honest with them. We're upfront. And I think that helps build a stronger relationship.
Yeah,
Because if we were
100%.
going to shoot the moon and say we sign a very, very large contract and we come up short year after year after year, you're just not going to build the same type of trust that you do.
Right.
And so those conversations we have with ocean carriers very early on in the year, as early as December, leading into May. Throughout the years, we have built some pretty neat tools. You don't run a shippers association this large without the tools necessary to make it a smooth process.
Right.
And so we have a very robust rate management system, robust contract management system. We have a manager of the product who focuses on that. During that time of year, he is 1,000% focused on those negotiations. And so we clean everything up, make sure we have all our data aligned, and it takes a ton of outreach.
Right.
It's hard to touch 400 shippers in a short period of time.
Right.
But getting that feedback from those shippers is critical to make sure that we know what we're getting into for the next year.
Right.
And we have all the information and knowledge from those shippers and importers as to how we're going to go into those contracts going into next year. And so all of that is a huge buildup. It takes months. And don't get me wrong, there's several rounds in this. So it's not a
Black
one
and
and
white thing.
done.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's several rounds. And of course, disruptions come and go
Yeah.
throughout that process. So where conversations could be in one place in January, could be a totally different place in May.
Yeah.
And last year was a prime example of that.
Right.
Right. It's those that signed early were able to capitalize because there was no, at least not a major disruption.
Yeah.
Those that signed late, it became an issue.
Yeah.
And turned around 12 months later, that disruption sort of still there. It was existent during the negotiation process, and so that's where rates ended up. But it's making sure relationships are there, making
Right.
sure you have all the information you need to build trust on both sides.
Right.
It's both the member
Yep.
side and the ocean carrier side. And then making sure that you have a process and tools to get it done.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, even when that contract is finally signed, there's still work
Yeah.
to be done after that. And that's where our IT folks, our platform really comes into play to be able to turn not only the number of contracts, but the number of port pairs in that short of a period of time, and typically all at once. I mean, we try to stagger them a little bit to help ourselves, but for the most part, within 3 months, we're signing the 15 contracts.
Wow.
And so it's huge undertaking,
Yeah, for sure.
very stressful,
I bet. Yeah.
but it is something that we do year in, year out.
Yeah. And so how like with that much going on volume, how do you ensure that your members get that same level of service, even though they're and remaining competitive at the same time?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So the remaining competitive piece, that one, because the majority of our volume is long-term rates, we can sort of rest a little bit on that, knowing that those rates aren't going to change and they're going to continue to move on those lanes. But as far as service goes, you're right. It's a big piece. It's not here's our contracts, we signed them, here's your rates, goodbye.
Right.
We continue to help the importers, continue to ask the questions that, hey, where's your business going? How much volume are you looking at? The forecast is a critical piece. If you ask any ocean carrier that question of how important the forecast is,
Right.
it is of utmost importance to them because they need to sail those vessels as full as they can. And the only way they know that is by knowing what the volume is coming.
Right.
Right. If they're flying blind, it'd be very hard to manage that piece.
Right.
And so that is something that we can consistently get on our members is like, let us know what's going on.
Right.
Do you have a new location you're moving into? Is your sales going up or down? And so that is a big piece that we need to make sure we stay on top of.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned what has changed. We've grown not just the business, but the team as
Yeah.
a whole. And we found that was a critical piece to do because we had a large number of members and we're pretty lean. At the end of the day, we are a not-for-profit company. And so we have a lean team and we had to expand in order to get that reach because you only have so many fingers.
Right.
And you can only have so much reach with those fingers.
Yep.
So we had to expand that to make sure that our members had the service and attention that they required.
Got it.
And then the big piece is being an advocate for the members and the ocean carriers alike, right? We're in the middle. We do give direct access to ocean carriers. So our ocean carrier reps, props to them because while they're probably only seen as managing one account, the Gemini Shippers Association, they actually have 400 voices behind that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so those folks have been really helpful. They stand by us, and they really are partners through this.
Yeah.
It's not a us versus them because you get into that situation, and no one wins out.
Yep.
And so that's a big piece of making sure that we can get and rise or bring up the issues that are important to them, and how to solve that for them.
Yep.
While at the same time have no operational control over it, right? Like we're not involved in the operations of it at all.
Right.
We don't have trucks, we don't have ships.
Yep.
And so all we have is our relationship with the ocean carriers and make sure that we get done what needs to get done.
Yep. So you mentioned this briefly towards the end of that. And I was wondering if you can give us an example of where Gemini had helped a shipper overcome a challenge recently that maybe they wouldn't have been able to overcome on their own. So.
Yeah, so we get this fairly often, and I'm not going to say recent because this is more. It's a long-term strategy. It really is. You can't see the association as I'm going to use it when I need to.
Yep.
That's actually when it fails. Okay. When a shipper comes on board and it's in a situation where the market is tight, they can't get space, the rates are high, it's a shining star for me. I join and use it during that period. And then when the market softens, abandon that model.
Right.
That's where it doesn't work.
Yep.
And so we remind our members and then incoming members that this is a long-term strategy. We rarely take 100% of their volume.
Okay.
Right. It's always a mix of models, whether it's freight forwarder, direct contract, association, and other options that are out there. It's for the most part, it's a mix. And so we do that on purpose because our model is great for a long-term strategy. And we really rely on that. I talked about the volume forecasting piece. We have to abide by that, and that's what we push our members to do. Mm-hmm. And so there's one member we meet with every year. It's in the automotive segment, so we're out at the SEMA show in November. And every single year, she takes my colleague Steve Hughes and I out to dinner because she remembers that time she was in such dire need.
And you guys
and we
saved the
came
day.
through for her.
Yeah, yeah.
And she said she's much closer with Steve than she is with me. But last year I recall it in my memory, mm-hmm. and I will never forget it. And Steve said, "Oh, thanks for taking us for dinner." And she goes, "No, Steve, I am forever in your debt."
Wow.
Because
mm-hmm.
this program has saved us throughout the years. And so those are the types of words that are so fulfilling in your roles and your job. It's like, that's why you do that. People talk about golf and how frustrating it is, and it's that one shot that gets you keep coming back.
Right. Yes.
Those are the comments that keep having you coming back.
Yeah.
So that's it's huge.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that definitely feels good and makes you want to keep going, right?
Yeah.
If
exactly.
only all could be that magical.
Yeah, exactly. And don't get me wrong, it's not always like that, right?
Well, especially your space. I mean,
yes, exactly.
It's like stress.
Yes.
All day, every day. Like, what's happening today?
Yes,
right?
exactly. So. And don't get me wrong, some shippers are like, "Oh, great, yeah, you saved me last year, but what are you doing for me today?" Right. And it's trying to work through those. And you're right. It's how do you manage that stress?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a roller coaster. I should say.
Yeah. Exactly.
The Arrow Podcast is brought to you by CMDS, a business breakthrough agency helping brands reinvent and reignite themselves at the core. We work with B2B companies to help them figure out how they're unique and remarkable in their own space, then leverage that information to build great websites, awesome social media strategies, and leadership content that's going to drive more brand awareness to their company. If you're looking to learn more about how we can help you achieve extreme business growth, please reach out to CMDS at 732-706-5555, or you can visit us online at cmdsonline.com. Let's talk policy for a second, since it's somewhat hot right now.
Okay.
Gemini's been active in DC, right?
Yeah.
Lobbying for tariff relief and also port fees. Tell me a little bit about what the biggest issue is that you're advocating for right now.
Yeah, and yes, so we're pretty active. Being an association, again, a not-for-profit, it helps us be in that space. Mm-hmm. The fact that we represent 400 shippers is a good, I'd say, a good gauge mm-hmm. for us to provide input. And our CEO, Ken O'Brien, is on the National Shippers Advisory Council, and he's there for that reason, to be able to provide feedback. Not just from one shipper, not just from one big importer, it's from hundreds of medium-sized guys.
Yep.
And so we do provide input. We feel our voice is heard. We do sign a lot of the coalition letters.
Okay.
And so, yeah, to your point, since, I'll say, TPM of this year, end of February, beginning of March, it's all been tariffs.
Yeah.
I'm grateful I'm not a customs broker in this space because you talk about stress.
Right.
Their life over the last 3-4 months has just been hectic.
Right.
For better or worse, keeping a neutral state of mind, just managing around the announcements, what's actually taking place, the changes, that is a landscape that's very, very difficult to navigate this year.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's impacting virtually all importers, right?
Yeah.
At some point, you're importing a product from a different country, and whatever fees or tariffs or taxes that apply today could be totally different 2 months from now. So we talk about building that foundation for how to manage costs for the year.
Right.
That's, you never know. That's rolling the dice and seeing how it's going to play out.
Right.
And regardless of what the announcements were and how they get ironed out, it's still a change.
Right.
And so that by far has been the number one topic of the year for sure.
Yeah.
It's going to continue.
Yep.
And how we manage that, it's a tough piece.
Yeah.
Because we're not directly in that space, our model helps that space. So we can save the shippers money on the ocean freight, and so it helps them buffer whatever tariffs apply to them. And so it's a helpful piece, but it's brought to light. Luckily, we don't have to speak on it directly too often.
Right.
But the big piece is making sure that we're still looking at what this all started, the Shippers Association piece, Shippers Association piece, how this all started. It was, how do we help the American medium to small size company on importing?
Right.
And any policy, anything that makes that more difficult, that's most likely where we're advocating towards.
Yep.
Right. And so not the difficult piece to make it easier, or not to make a change to where it's going to be detrimental. A lot of the Gemini team members come from the maritime, the ocean carrier side of the business. And so we have that background as to how is that going to affect the ocean carriers? How are the ocean carriers going to react to these type of things, right?
Right.
Having that knowledge, just that comes by nature, is helpful in the public space whenever we're speaking on a public forum, giving a deposition at one of the, or giving a testimonial in DC, or just overall writing or signing some of these coalition letters, really fighting for those companies to make sure that they can continue to do business. It still makes sense to do business, and we can keep those companies alive.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is like true advocacy right there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
It's good. It feels good for sure. At times it's difficult because sometimes it doesn't feel like your voice is heard.
Right.
At times it does.
Yeah.
There are some changes that have taken place this year, and we know it came from pieces of what we've provided in the testimonies, in the coalition letters, and overall efforts in making sure our voice is heard. And so to hear and see those changes happen in DC from the Oval Office, it's
pretty wild.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Very, very, very cool. So digital transformation has affected every industry, and specifically, the 3PL space, shipping logistics, right? So how is Gemini helping members adopt tools that give real-time tracking and the ability to kind of like really understand data analytics and even blockchain?
Yeah. So the big piece is putting that in the fingertips of the importers, the shippers, right? Because for the most part, a lot of these tools obviously don't come free. There's hundreds of options out there, and it's hard to know which ones are for them. And by necessity, we've had to build some of these tools, like the rate management system, the contract management system, like I mentioned. Those are things that we had to do in order to manage the association in a seamless manner.
Yep.
While building those tools, we also built the tools for the members. When you think of a rate management system, you have hundreds, tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of lanes. How do you bring that into a user interface for a shipper?
Right.
Well, we build a rate search tool, a rate download tool, and we have dashboards so they can look at those. And so those are the things, because out of necessity we built these to help ourselves, we moved that forward and built it for our members.
That's great.
And so
is
that's
that real-time data? Like, where is the data coming from?
It is. It is. So at least, well, from the rates, it's a lot more straightforward because everything goes through its formal process. But let's talk the track and trace.
Yep.
Right. We partnered with the ocean carriers to get the direct EDI feeds from directly their platforms, and so we are getting those updates live.
That's great.
If feeds our platform, which again, we have to know what is moving, the volumes, and so we turn that around and created an interface for our members so they can then track their shipments. And don't get me wrong, there are tools out there that go in way more detail, but this, for a quick plug and play, make it accessible to the members, it's been great.
That's great.
We brought visibility tools. You can actually have a map of the vessels out in the middle of the ocean, and you can track your containers on it, right? So now when the C-suite says, hey, where's our 10 containers?
Right.
That director of transportation can open up his computer, pull up the map and say, yeah, it's here just south of Korea right now.
Right.
And so they can literally point out that's where our containers are.
Right.
And so those tools, a ton of credit goes to our technology team because it takes a lot of effort and it's a big undertaking. We released a new member portal earlier in the year, and that was huge. And we talked about the timing. When is a good timing to do this? It's never a good timing to do this.
And that's just part of the membership, right? Or is
Yes, that's
okay.
all part of the membership. That's what comes with joining the association, aside from the ocean procurement model. And that is something that we felt it is a value-add service, and it's something of a necessity for our members. Not all members use them, right? Some members are fully integrated with a freight forwarder or any other type of service provider, and so it's a nice to have, but they have this other company that is helping them with their supply chain. There are others who are very hands-on, and they will look and track their own containers. And then there's others that have their internal systems and have the team to be able to manage that. And that's where it gets a little bit less usage, but nonetheless, we're building those tools to help the members, small, medium, or large.
Right.
We build them to try to suffice the needs of all of them.
That's very cool. What else is there, like, top of mind that you're offering? It sounds like there's just a ton of value to be part of the Gemini Shippers Association. What other tools or things are you doing that add value?
So we do have an annual members meeting. It's a great place for our members to come in, network with each other in a safe place. Yep. We keep the outside service providers out a little bit just so they can BCO to BCO. Yep. And so we build that up each year. We bring a great list of guest speakers. Huge shout out to all of our guest speakers that we've had so far and for this year's meeting. We pull a solid list, and we take pride in that.
That's great.
And so that's a benefit to our members to come and listen to the industry leaders. Yep. And also network amongst themselves. We're also a trade association, right? So we talk about advocacy, right, other resources. We have a very smart team that does research and consulting, and we share those resources with our members so they can be a smarter supply chain analyst, director of transportation, or logistician. And so those are all things that add benefits. And then our partnerships, right? You get direct access to ocean carriers, which is rare for a small shipper. We have partnership with other associations. So those that are involved in industry-specific associations like the SEMAs of the world, MEMAs of the world. Yep. We did a recent one with the Spice Trade Association. And so those, you have a dual purpose. And we are at those events, yep, speaking, being there as a resource, and making sure that those shippers have a place to go to whenever they have questions. And then we also have other partners in the space that we know we're trusted in them. If our member needs drayage, they'll come to us and ask us questions, right? Hey, do you know any drayage provider in the New York, New Jersey area? Right, yeah. We can refer them to those partners. So we know we're going to do them right, yep, and make sure we have just the same amount of trust that our members have in us, that they'll have in them. Yeah. And
that adds a ton of value, right?
It does,
and,
yeah.
You know, if you look at like retail right now, they're facing pressure from all sides, right? Yes. So, you know, even beyond that, like what have you been able to do as an organization that's helped them stay competitive?
Yeah. The stability piece that we've talked to is huge, but as of recent, especially this year with the announcements on the tariffs and whatnot, one piece that was a big value add to our members is when they were looking at alternative sourcing, different locations they import from or manufacture,
Right.
they don't have an idea of what the cost is going to be.
Right.
Right. So they're looking, let's say a company has been solely in China or a China plus one model.
Yep.
And they're now looking in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Thailand, and these other parts of the world. India has grown a lot. But they don't know what it's going to cost. So
Right.
maybe their manufacturing goes up X%. And they're building their whole plan around this X% without knowing that, this Southeast Asia origin could be twice as much as your China baseport to the West Coast.
Right.
Without them knowing, it'd be a huge burden on them. And so they've come to us asking, hey, is there any way, like we're looking at sourcing in this location? What's the overall gauge of rates from that location? We've been able to help them with that. And so that's a big piece that is an unknown in the world.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know where their products are coming from. And so for these importers to make a shift, it's a big deal for them. It's a big thing. And for them to have the peace of mind of at least knowing what the general cost is going to be, it's a big piece to help them grow, right? You talk about growth and being that engine of growth. We are there to help support that by assisting those importers with those types of changes.
So, if you were to have a crystal ball, what do you think the big challenges are going to be in the next 2 to 3 years?
Oof, that is it's a good question. No one has a crystal ball,
Right.
but we'll do our best. And I really think
There's been so much disruption globally.
it is,
right?
yeah.
So
And that,
it's
and
like, how
so
does this all pan out?
globally and domestically,
Yeah.
right? So there's a huge impact for our industry is what is the consumer going to do?
Right.
You talk about the COVID years and how much volume that brought for the containerized shipping industry. And that was all driven by consumer base.
Yep.
Right. Everyone went home. Everyone purchased products for the home, and make purchases for retail stores and online purchases. And that drove a lot of volume. And so the economy is probably, in my opinion, going to be the biggest thing to look out for in the next, we'll call it 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. There's a big change going on right now. Obviously, we're still seeing a lot of changes with the new administration that's going to drive some of these facets that's related to the economy and how that consumer is going to react. Are people going to continue to make purchases? Are they going to continue to buy cars,
Right.
houses? A lot of that drives a lot of the products that we're importing. And so if those outlooks look low, look grim, then we're probably going to see a drop in the market. If things bounce back, who knows what's going to happen with if the Fed reduces the interest rate? That's a huge driver of influx of investment, and with that comes consumerism, right?
Yep.
That's if you have more money in your pocket to spend, you're going to buy more products, and that in turn means importing more products.
Right.
And so I think that's going to be the big piece. Don't get me wrong. There's going to be disruption in there throughout the years, but I think that's a big piece everyone is looking at right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So for companies listening that aren't members yet, what would you say about Gemini that would maybe make them want to consider being a member outside of all the other great things that you said? Maybe something that they might not expect.
Yeah, so that expectation piece, when we say this all the time, we go into sales calls and we give our pitch. It's not long, maybe half an hour, we're having conversation. And at the end of it, when we talk about our model and how the commitment is not necessarily there, they don't have to commit all this volume until it's all in or whatnot. At the end of it, they say, this sounds too good to be true. And we're, in fact, in some cases, we're proactive. We say, like, this might sound too good to be true,
Right.
but this is why it's not. And once we start listing everything out, that's where it sort of clicks, right? Because it's tough to make a change, right? We've all worked in these companies with organizations, small or large, and making a system change, for example, that's huge.
Right.
Making an organizational change, it's huge.
Right, yeah.
And a process change is really, that's what this is. It's a big piece.
Yep.
So they're very cautious at, okay, so what does this mean? How are we going to manage it? I don't have a person to manage this for me. And so we spell it out like, look, we can help you. We have partners that can help manage this for you. In many cases, we end up mentioning like, hey, you're going to save X amount based on what you're currently doing. You have enough in the budget to pay a person to manage this if you need to.
Right.
In most cases, they don't take that, but in reality, it is. And so when we have that conversation, it starts to click.
Yep.
And we're very pragmatic in our approach. And because we have a background in the operations, it's very real, right? It's a real conversation. It doesn't sound like a sales pitch. And I think that helps. That's really starting to build that trust with that member or potential member.
Right.
And more often than not, even if they don't join, we get return calls. They say, you know what? I talked to Roman from Gemini, and he had a good knowledge base and resource for me to reach out to. And so even if they don't join, they come back and ask questions.
Right.
Hey, what's the market doing? What are you guys seeing? Can you guys still accept members? Because that's another thing. We have to manage and plan our volumes. We can't always accept any and all member.
Got it.
We have to manage that piece. And so that is something that we work with, but it is that expectation it's hard to meet when people are set in their ways and they have their process and things are going smoothly. Even to save money, they might say, I don't know if this is for us.
Right.
And that's where it can be. It's still an uphill battle on the sales side.
Right. Yeah. No, I can understand for sure.
Yeah.
If you had to give me one word, the state of the global supply chain, what would that word be?
Oh, I've said it before. It's disruption.
Disruption.
It is.
Yeah.
That is.
I
what
feel like
we're,
it's always disruption.
that is what we're managing day in, day out, month in, month out, and every year.
Yeah.
It is. That's what makes it interesting. You never know what's going to pop up in the news.
Yep.
What's going to pop up in the market, and how that impacts our business.
Yeah.
So, even if you try to come up with another word, it comes back to disruption.
What's one myth about the association that maybe you could bust? Like something that maybe people think or perceive, but it's not really true, and maybe they haven't talked to you guys yet. Or...
One piece which is a big selling point for us is that it comes with a large commitment.
Okay.
We're pretty flexible, and because we have the availability of ocean carrier contracts, we are flexible based on the member's needs, right? It's never a one-size-fits-all solution, and we have to make sure that based on that member volume, the locations, what they're doing at destination, we help them fit to which ocean carrier works for them. And at the same time, you want to offer multiple options, but also you can't offer all 10 to 15 options either. Yep. We don't have that type of model. And so we try to help them out. And with that, as we mentioned, ocean carriers, the first thing that comes to their mind is like, well, what's my commitment going to be? What's my commitment going to be? Or maybe I have that volume now, but I don't know what my volume is going to look like in Q3.
Right.
And so we try to help manage that with them.
Got it.
And this is where we mentioned, like, we talked about the three-legged stool at times. It's the three legs being a direct ocean carrier contract, a freight forwarder or NVO spot contract, and the shippers association. And so we often recommend that three-piece strategy because it's the only way you can build flexibility, yet have a long-term commitment that ultimately builds resiliency within your supply chain.
Right.
And that is, I think that's, once you explain and go into detail on that, it helps build that or contradict that myth. Because a lot of folks can be scared going into it, like, well, I don't have the volume to give you all my volume or sign a contract. Well, let me explain what the model looks like.
Right.
And that's where it helps get over hump,
initial.
so to say.
Yeah, right. Okay, makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, what does success look like for a member after they've joined Gemini?
You know, I've thought about this, and more so, I'm leaning towards growth. Why? It's not growth of the association, it's not growth of our volume, it's that company's growth.
Right.
If we have helped that company grow, which in 99.9% of cases, that company wants to grow, and we've helped in one way get them towards that, then we've been successful.
Yeah.
Right. That's from the shipper side.
Yeah.
You turn that around on the ocean carrier side. If we are growing with the ocean carrier is getting the volume that they need to fill their ships. We're strengthening that partnership, and that volume is consistent. We are typically growing with them,
Right.
which means they are growing and getting the volume that they want from us.
Right.
Again, success.
Yep.
And so that program as a whole, that ecosystem of intermediary being us, the ocean procurement piece, the importer or the shipper, and the ocean carrier. There's growth within that ecosystem.
Yep.
In the middle is success.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I had a great time listening to we discuss or talk about Gemini. I knew a lot about it, but I actually learned a lot too. So, is there anything else you want to leave us with before we close out the podcast?
No, I think I appreciate you bringing me on, Chris. And our partnership has grown and gone very well from day one. So I really do appreciate that. I know our team does as well.
Great, thank you.
And so the big thing I think for shippers and importers out there, if you have a question, if you're still not sure what you're doing, I think the big piece is pick up the phone or shoot us an email, and we'll try to talk through it. The fact that we can talk to that in a neutral environment and a neutral space is really helpful.
Yeah, I agree. And so now what's the best way for somebody to get in touch with you guys?
Yep. You can go on our website, GeminiShippers.com.
Okay.
We have all of our contact information in there. We have a team of reps that, based on geographical or geographical location or commodity, we can help out. But that's going to be the easiest way.
Yep.
We have some resources on there as well. You can check that out and see some of the other things that we offer. But you get a lot of the information there. But for the most part, reach out and we can talk through it.
That sounds great. And then if anybody wants to stay up to date as to what's happening at Gemini, LinkedIn is probably the best social channel to follow you guys, right?
Yeah, exactly. We're pretty active on there because of the advocacy, some of the things that we're doing. And so follow the page on LinkedIn. We'll share our resources there, as well as our operating arm and consulting arm, Blue Spark. They're putting out some great information. And so those two pages are great pages to follow and know what's going on.
Great.
And again, you can reach out to us there as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris.